Hi, I'm Roxy Ryan. I'm the Managing Director of Hardie Grant Books. Thanks so much for joining us for our 2022 Roadshow. This year we've got a wonderful selection of books to share with you, and I hope you enjoy them as much as we do. At Hardie Grant Books, we try to challenge the status quo and to do things a little bit differently. We want to contribute to the cultural conversation, and this year I think we've got a wonderful range of books that do just that. From a landmark cookbook, to an insider's time in Wuhan, to a favourite comedian's memoir. We've got something for every bookseller and every customer. Thank you for your support over the past 12 months, and we all look forward to a successful and less dramatic 2022. Thanks again for joining us this evening to learn all about our key titles for the next 6 months, and I hope you love them just as much as I do.
Hi， 我的名字叫Murong Xuecun，是一个中国的作家，也是。
Hi, my name is Murong Xuecun. I am a Chinese author. I'm also the author of Deadly Quiet City. This book is about the period when Wuhan city was in lockdown. It was quite thrilling, the writing of this book through the many interviews that I had with various people in Wuhan. It all started on the 3rd of April in 2020. I received a telephone call from Clive Hamilton. He asked me, why am I in Beijing and not in Wuhan? And it was this simple statement that led me to going to Wuhan and writing the book that I've written. So I went and bought myself a railway ticket to Wuhan. I secretly left my home and walked to the railway station, and then I boarded the train to Wuhan. The secret police must have known my whereabouts, as they called me. When I arrived in Wuhan, Wuhan was still under lockdown. It left a very profound impression on me. There was absolutely no one on the street, not a single vehicle could be seen. It was like a ghost town that had been left behind. During the interviews that I carried out with the people in Wuhan, I felt as though that everybody was very nervous and quite timid. I felt as though I was being watched. When I received telephone calls from friends, I would hide myself under the bed quilt and speak in the lowest voice that I could to make sure I wasn't being heard. My fears about the whole process were quite well founded. There were many people who tried to go to Wuhan to find out about the truth of what was going on there. They included people such as Fang Bin, Zhang Zhan, Chen Qiushi. Many of them had disappeared or were no longer heard from. Often the places that I went to in Wuhan, I was driven away. People would shout out, go away, go away. And this included places such as that fearsome virology laboratory, the South China seafood market, and several hospitals. I received many calls from the secret police. They asked me why I had come to Wuhan. I said I was just here to have a look around. They laughed and they said to me, you should be careful in what you're doing. I mean, if you were infected with the virus, then things would be difficult for you. Such a really simple conversation between them led me to change my plans quite suddenly, and I decided to flee from Wuhan immediately. So it was very clear from that telephone conversation that they were trying to tell me two things. One, we know that you're in Wuhan, and two, that you should stop the conversation. And within 10 days of me leaving Wuhan, one of the characters that I wrote about in this book, Zhang Zhan, was arrested. In order to complete the writing of this book, I left Beijing and went to the countryside where I was able to complete the book. And even in doing so, they still called me on several occasions. I actually lied to them. I said to them that I was writing a science fiction novel. It wasn't such a big lie because there were many episodes in the book I was writing that could be compared to a science fiction novel. On many occasions, I thought that I was under immediate threat of being arrested. I said to Clive, I really feel as though I may be arrested. If that were to be the case, I'd be grateful if he were able to complete the writing of the book. It took approximately a year for me to complete the book. When I was finally able to hand it over to Clive, I felt quite relieved at doing that. And I said to him, it really doesn't matter what happens to me, but I'd be grateful if you're able to make sure the book was published. I think that you'll find that this is not really a happy book. You'll feel sad, depressed, or even angry. But it is a book that reflects the true happenings of the people who lived in Wuhan. Of the characters that I wrote about in this book, one was about a mother who lost her only daughter. One was about a woman who worked as a cleaner who lost her husband. These people were living real lives. It was though they were living in a nightmare. During the process of writing this book, I used to often ask myself, why is it worth writing? And the answer was that I felt that I needed to give a voice to these people who could not be heard. I needed to reveal those events and facts that had been covered up. I felt that in China, voices that were reflected in my book and the facts that had occurred didn't exist. The events that I wrote about in my book occurred in 2020, but in fact these events are still going on. They're not only occurring in places like Wuhan, but also in other cities throughout China, and people are still living these events as they occur. And I think we also need to look to the next disaster and remember our experiences of Wuhan during this period of lockdown.
Hi everyone, greetings from here in Bali. My name's Kerthyasa.
I'm Chef Wayan Yasa.
And we're the authors of Paon, Real Balinese Cooking, which is a book that goes beyond the recipes into the culinary culture of Balinese cooking as a whole. So how food connects us to our community, to our landscape, and also to our spiritual life.
We write this cookbook to celebrate Balinese cuisine and also put Balinese culinary heritage center stage among any other cuisine around the world, or especially Southeast Asia. Also, we believe Paon is the first Balinese cookbook that written by Balinese people and published internationally. We very happy to share with everyone in the world.
Yeah, and as well as sharing with everyone else in the world, I think there's a big element of us wanting to preserve the kind of food and also techniques that we grew up with. Because we were both very fortunate to grow up with grandmothers who were not only very, very wonderful cooks, but also part of the last generation to grow up and cook in traditional kitchens such as this one. So we draw a lot of wisdom from them, and we also talk about things like intuitive cooking, eating with your hands, cooking with your hands, native ingredients, foraging, traditional farming, and also food as an offering, and much, much more. So more than just the recipes, which are wonderful, there is a lot of philosophy in there and wisdom that's been handed down from the generations past.
Like Maya mentioned as well, is just foraging using the native ingredient. This native ingredient also can be replaced in your home kitchen around the globe. But make sure you have the base, the basic base of Balinese flavor. You can use, like I said, replace the ingredient beside the spice with any other vegetable or protein or seafood. Here in Balinese, we always end up with food and cooking together.
Yeah, and so we want you to have fun, but we also don't want anyone to cut corners. There's a really big emphasis on the whole process that is involved in Balinese cooking. So you'll be making your coconut milk from scratch. You'll be cooking rice, double cooking rice the traditional way, even making spice paste and everything from start to finish the completely traditional way. And there are a few little cheats and alternatives in there, but I think for the most part we wanted to preserve the truly traditional techniques, ingredients and flavors of the Balinese kitchen, not only for the global audience but for our brothers and sisters here as well.
And then I also want to keep the culture, the food culture and Balinese culture alive. That Balinese, I don't want a Balinese culture die from the modernization era. So now it's less people cooking Balinese, except the old generation, because the young generation already try to make modern cuisine rather than Balinese. So that's also motivate me to write this book and sharing with global audience, to keep the culture alive. And then when you guys, when the tourism is open, you come to Bali, first thing that you want to try, hey, I want to try this food in Bali instead of go to the rafting or go to snorkeling. So I want to try this food at this place, on my second day or my first day. So to give you more, excitement when you come back to Bali and then experience Bali for your second time or third time or even first time.
So we're not so much telling people what to do, but how we do it in different parts of the island and why. And how food can be more than just nourishment. And this is, of course, an extension or an expression, you might say, of our culture, but we're hoping that it will give people a window into how food can be incorporated into anyone's spiritual practice anywhere in the world. So how cooking could be meditative, how eating can be an experience to go inwards, and how engaging with food can form a dialogue between us and Mother Earth, really.
Yeah, it's true.
Hi, my name's Jackie Bailey. Thank you so much for watching this video and hearing me talk about my debut autofiction novel, The Eulogy. And I want to acknowledge that I live and work on the traditional lands of the Wadi Wadi people of the Darawal Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Eulogy is basically about me and my sister. It's fiction because fiction gave me a bit of a bigger canvas to work with, so I could go back and forth in time and I could explore my mother and my father's history, my mother's childhood under the Japanese occupation in Singapore, and my dad's history as a member of the Australian Army, as a medic in the Army. And it allowed me to create a kind of more compelling contemporary plot for my protagonist. But in addition to that, it gave me sort of the safety to talk about some tough stuff like disability, trauma, racism, poverty, maternal rage, like all the fun stuff. The Eulogy is set in Logan in southeast Queensland, which is where I grew up. And it's basically structured around the protagonist, Kathy Bradley, writing the eulogy for her sister, Annie, who just died in Logan Hospital. Not all of it is true, but the core relationship and the core emotion of a love story between sisters is absolutely 100% authentic. My sister Alison was diagnosed with a brain tumour in 1983 when we were both quite little, and that really coloured and affected our lives. Before she died, the book was very much about our lives together growing up around her illness, and after she died it became more of a lament, I suppose, and a leave-taking of Alison, and also a statement about the future. Ultimately, I do think that this book, even though it's called The Eulogy, so it makes it sound like it's going to be all doom and gloom, it's actually about hope.
Hi, Hardie Grant. It's Jayne Tuttle here, coming to you from my laundry. I just wanted to talk to you about My Sweet Guillotine, my new book that comes out with you this year. My Sweet Guillotine is a book about, or rather set in Paris, like another book you may have heard of. So in My Sweet Guillotine, we open with Jayne arriving back in Paris to resume her life. She's going to direct a play and wants to keep going with her Paris life as if nothing really happened. She is trying to create an adult life in Paris, but this accident just won't leave her alone, and the after effects, to a point where somebody else actually dies in the same way her accident happened, and which provokes her to take legal action. And that leads to a big cultural awakening. It's a true story, but it reads like a novel. It is, I hope, funny, weird, contemplative, deep, exciting, page-turning. God knows what is going to happen next. We never know if a giant arsenic lobster might just fall out of the sky on our head. And I feel like there's something of that in this book, which is we just never quite know what is going to happen to us. And what do we do about that? Do we play victim? Do we accept it? Do we move forward in an optimistic way? I am really excited about this book. It goes to another level, I think, than of Paris, on top of Paris or Die, leading the reader into some new territory. So I hope that everybody loves it. I hope you love it. And I just can't wait for it to be out in the world. So thank you for joining me in this illustrious space, and I will see you soon. Bye.
We're really out of the habit of making things ourselves, and there's lots of reasons for that, but everybody used to make everything and now we don't. A lot of those skills that were very common and commonly passed from family member to family member aren't, and that's actually what this book is. This book is supposed to be this really friendly guidebook to hold your hand and walk through making some of the really simple things that we used to always make, and that really are literally 3 or 4 ingredients, but are things that are probably in your shopping cart every week. So the question is it worth it? Is it really worth making your own yogurt? Is it worth making your own crackers? Is it worth making your own butter? And I think that what I've tried to do in this book is tell the story about why it's worth it. So it's got quite a long narrative through the whole story as well, which is supposed to be this real fight against consumerism and why actually making the things yourselves is worth the time. Because I know you've got to go to the supermarket to buy the ingredients, and you could buy the actual product 3 aisles over, but I think it's really exciting to be a creator and to be not just be a consumer but be a producer. And so that's what this book is about as well. It's about going back to from scratch principles and making the things that you eat every day yourself for fun.
Hello, I'm Roxy Ryan. I'm the Managing Director of Hardie Grant Books, and I'm here talking to author, chef, restaurateur, media personality, Karen Martini. We have Karen's big, beautiful, bold book, Cook, coming out in August of 2022. We were just discussing how we're both completely mad for having decided to go ahead with this. This book is over 1,000 recipes, over 912 pages. It covers everything that you could possibly need or want in the kitchen, and I'm here today to ask Karen some questions.
Hi, thanks Roxy.
Karen, Cook is more than 5 years in the making. It's been a massive journey. What was it that made you think that you wanted to embark on such a thing?
Good question. We are both mad, I think. I think I've been reflecting or thinking about embarking on a book that taught or supported people in the kitchen from many different angles, and at sharing my cooking journey as well. I've been thinking about that for a long time, but actually doing it. So 5 years ago, we embarked on deciding that we could, and I suppose the journey behind this book is a lot longer. It's 26 years or maybe close to 30 years of cooking and eating, and I suppose all the pleasure in life I've realised comes from food and flavour, and I really, really wanted to share that from a deep level. My other books, many of them, well, I lost count, but
9, I believe.
9
yep.
are really just little stepping stones, I think, to get to this point, because they were only, 100 or 80 recipes,
Only
120.
80 recipes, yeah.
I know, but when you just pull everything together and I've cherry picked so many recipes, and then 50% of new recipes because we're here at this point in my career today. So that's the biggest difference, I suppose, and the biggest reason behind wanting to produce Cook. Yeah.
It's worth people noting that, just as a fun fact, the recipes that we cut from this book for reasons of space are enough to fill a full cookbook by themselves. So it does give you an idea of the scope of this cookbook and the amount of work that has gone into it.
Mind you, that was very painful to cull.
There were almost tears.
There were almost tears.
Yeah.
It's like, flicking your babies off the edge.
I know, because they weren't cut because they were bad. They were just cut because we had to cut it at 912 pages. Karen, when we developed the concept of this book, we all agreed that we wanted it to be an instant classic, something that would be used every day, and something that would be a go-to gift as well. So how do you hope people use this book?
Well, I hope when you do buy this, if you purchase this book and eventually you've opened it and you're sitting at home and you're reflecting and reading, that you can't possibly shut it without cooking something. That is, the ultimate focus for me, and also having someone endeavour on cooking something that they've never cooked before, if they're a confident cook in the kitchen, to expand their repertoire, to spread their wings a little further. And if you haven't cooked at all, you will find so much to read, and enrichment, I suppose, from my love of food hopefully transfers on to that person that is a little bit, I suppose, awkward in the kitchen, or hasn't had the confidence to cook before. I'm hoping to pass on that love or my adoration of food and my love of cooking, and that rubs off, or just transfers to whoever's reading the book, and then cooking from it. So it should be well thumbed and stained, hopefully in a few months rather than a few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And your love of food is so contagious in the pages. I think that's what really comes out to me, and your sort of expertise in flavour. But what I didn't expect, I think, is how much of you is on the page. And you talk about your family and your upbringing. Can you talk a little bit about your heritage and what it was like for you growing up and how that informed your views on food?
I think from an early age I realised there was a love of food. It wasn't just purely because I was hungry. It was, I hung around the kitchen a lot, doing homework and whatnot, or it'd be you're home from school straight to the kitchen to find out, not only to get a snack, but what's for dinner. Because my mother is Irish of heritage, and she was a very simple cook, but she learnt from my father's mother, my mère, Grace. When they got married, there were a few hard lessons and it was very hard for Mum to understand. And I suppose my grandmother, and the biggest message she ever passed on to my mother and also passed on to me, because I did cook and learn from her and ate a lot of her food as a young person growing up, was that the love that goes into the recipe and how you feel when you're cooking really contributes to the dish. And that was like her biggest secret, and also shopping in a particular way and the ingredients, but it's all about the method, when you add things to the pot and when you don't, and how you're feeling at that time.
I think one of the things for me that I love so much about the book is, this isn't the first sort of big landmark book with lots of pages and lots of different recipes, but to me it's such a contemporary take and such a reflection of the way that we cook and eat today, which I think is so integral to what you do. So how do you get that onto the page?
Well, if you think about Australia, it's rich with cultural diversity. We all have the most amazing curries or Asian dishes or noodle or broths or Vietnamese salads or at our fingertips, but to make them at home, it's a little bit more of a challenge. And that's, I suppose, how I think about food. It's what I feel like eating, and then the recipe gets developed, and we all experience, a fabulous Rogan Josh at home, or, I set off to make tom yum. I focus on those flavours first and then think, how do I get that, and which dish and which cuisine am I going to push out into? And I really enjoy cooking Thai, for instance. Thai flavours are just gorgeous, and there are a lot of dishes that reflect my love of those flavours. I also have a love of David Thompson and a lot of respect for if you dig deep into some of his books, there's so much richness there that then I reinterpret and sort of refresh in a way, or what is the word, crystallise, if you like, in the recipes so that you can achieve it at home. And I try and make it as simple as possible, but without cutting out the little bits that make something quite like perfect. So there's a lot of refining there to hand it over to someone that maybe hasn't cooked a Thai, paw salad before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really, crystallising those ideas, refining. Every recipe that's in the book has been cooked at least 2 or 3 times by me to get to the point for it to then be edited and go into cook, which then hands whoever is reading and experiencing cook can then reproduce that at home successfully. That's my biggest goal, to have people sharing those flavours and dishes, whichever way. Choose your own adventure.
It might be mean of me to ask you to pick favourites amongst 1,000 recipes. Are there any that you particularly hope people cook?
Do you have a favourite child, Roxy?
I don't have 1,000 children, luckily.
Do you know, I always say it's the one on my knee at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not a favourite, but what do you...
Do you know what I really enjoyed? I think that this book, you don't think I just sat down and started writing. It made me push the boundaries on my own skills and my own, thought process around doing things. And wasn't like everyone else. I hadn't made sourdough bread from scratch at home. I hadn't made a starter from a tablespoon of yogurt and a raisin before, but I have now, and the results, you just check out my Instagram, those loaves of bread have come from that, but that is because cook pushed me there, and then refining the recipe and handing over all of my knowledge in one recipe was really hard work to define it and crystallise it so that it's going to be foolproof for anyone. So that is kind of a favourite recipe because of the work behind it, and also my love of just the sourdough bread, the result you get and how easy it is to digest and how much, there's so many dishes and nothing goes to waste because there is so much love in that loaf, that right down to the last crumb, that you might make breadcrumbs and then the next thing you know you're crumbing your schnitzel with some, with that same sourdough that you made because you can't bear to throw out the crust. What else? There's the yeasted bun recipes as well. Everyone that knows me really knows me. I'm not a sweet tooth. I'm a savoury tooth. I will always go for the savoury, the dip or the salad rather than the cake at the party. But I do have a great love of the perfect quintessential cakes, or the quintessential chocolate cake, or the yeasted bun, or the custard tart. I do love a custard tart. Or perfectly roasted quinces, or poached fruit. So it really is, it's seasonally driven, and making the most of what you can in that period of time, and understanding why we buy and eat seasonally is really important as well. So that is a favourite thing in the book for me, because you get a better result if you cook with asparagus in spring instead of buying Mexican asparagus, which you haven't really thought about, off the supermarket shelf in the middle of winter. And then you follow the asparagus recipe and you go, that's a bit average. But the reason it is average is because the asparagus is way average, and I'm trying to avoid that disappointment for people.
Yeah.
Giving them the tools and the knowledge to cook the right thing at the right time of year gives sensational results for the most simplistic recipes. So they're my favourites as well.
The images jump off the page and you can taste them.
There are a lot of images. We should actually mention that. I know we should set out to do 150, but there's definitely maybe 250 recipe images, or step-by-steps in some cases. you're right, that does jump off the page, and I wish I could do an image for every single recipe. And if they had let me, I probably
a 2,000 page book, yeah.
But everything in moderation.
Yes.
We give you just enough to keep you turning those pages, and you will see the most beautiful salads and creations that come from my curiosity and my hunger all the time, and that's what ends up, what comes to mind. There was a technique of calamari, which I love very much, and in Vietnam they blanch it very quickly and then throw it into a fiery dressing, or blanch it in water, and then so it's just tender and just cooked. And I thought, well, let's not use this in an Asian way, and I made a vitella tonato sauce, a tuna mayonnaise, and the calamari is blanched really quickly. Blanched calamari, shaved finely. I called it a Venetian-style salad, tossed with lemon and capers and parsley and green chilli and some little tiny currants on top of the tuna dressing, like a mayonnaise dressing that has tuna in it and roasted garlic. And they're just unconventional flavours that is exciting to see, and there's a beautiful picture of that particular dish.
Yes, I remember.
But
that.
it doesn't come from it comes from me and loving those flavours and using a few techniques. And I think that's what I was getting to. You will just naturally pick up technique without the formality of a cookbook by following a recipe, and then realise on reflection that you've done something like blanching the calamari perfectly and then dressing it simply and dropping it on a rich mayonnaise is just glorious as a salad.
Fantastic. Well, Karen, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about this book. I truly can't wait for the world to see it, for the booksellers to love it, and for customers and cooks, home cooks, to embrace it. Slightly terrified to see it in the flesh when it does arrive.
Well, let alone the cover of it, because that's quite controversial as well.
Yes, two covers, two coloured covers. So brace yourselves.
Graphic covers.
Yeah, beautiful graphic covers. So you will see that too. So thank you, Karen. We can't wait to see it.
I could chat for hours, but...
Hello, I'm Shaun Micallef. I'm a television star. You probably know me from Mad as Hell, maybe talking about your generation, or a Newstopia, or the Micallef program, or Full Frontal, or maybe Mr. and Mrs. Murder. But if you haven't seen those programs, that's okay, because I've written an autobiography about my life, and it's going to be pretty much like this. This isn't it, obviously. This is just the idea of it. We wouldn't use Gary Ablett's face or name, but it'll be the same sort of thing. It'll have a cover on it, and I'm assuming. Yes, going to have a cover on it, have some pages in it, and I'll tell you stories about me growing up in South Australia, which, sure, sounds dull, but, there are some interesting things about that, and what made me want to be a comedian, and what made me want to become a lawyer, and what made me not want to become a lawyer, and what made me not want to be a comedian all that much at one point, and it's fascinating. I don't know if you've read Proust's 7-volume set about his life, but goes on a bit faster than that and leaves out some of the dull bits. I know I will be available to come to your shop and sell it, but I won't buy it because I can get them free.
Well, my name's Emily Hart and I am a commissioning editor at Hardie Grant Books, and I'm very lucky to be here today with well-renowned fashion illustrator and Hardie Grant's most stylish author, Megan Hess. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you for having me.
So, Meg, last year you hit a huge milestone with 1 million books in print across 10 languages. Incredible, congratulations.
I still can't believe that.
Yeah.
Even you say that.
So readers obviously love your books, and I thought we could start by talking a little bit about why you love making them.
Well, I mean, it feels like yesterday that we actually just started on the first book. It's gone so quickly, and I still can't believe that I still can't believe the milestone of selling that many books, but I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that the process of creating the books is just, is just pure joy. I mean, you know this from working together.
We have a lot of fun.
We have a lot of fun, and I really enjoy the whole process of making books, and I think fashion is something, you know, all of my books in some way relate back to fashion, and it's a subject that I've been inspired by, and I find a lot of interesting different paths that you can go down in a book. There's different stories on designers which we've delved into, and I just love it. And I think there's something about that finished book, after all the work that's gone into it, after all the pages that are everywhere in the studio, the back and the forth, the editing, when you finally see it, you know, as a finished book, it's just always something I feel really proud of, and I just love it.
Yeah, well, I think the one that you've got coming up that we've just been working on is one of my favourites that we've done so far. I think turning the lens from a fashion designer to a fashion icon like Audrey Hepburn has been really exciting. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about what you have loved about Audrey's sort of fashion journey. I know it really means a lot to you.
Yeah, I almost can't believe we didn't do this book earlier because I think, and I've described this before, that I honestly think my first fashion moment or moment as a kid when I discovered fashion was when I saw Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I saw Audrey Hepburn in that incredible Givenchy dress, and there was something about that moment that just sparked a curiosity of, was that dress made for her? Who made that dress? And so my love of Audrey really started when I was a lot younger, and I think when we began working on the Coco Chanel and the Dior biographies, and then we sort of enjoyed them so much that we were looking at who would be next, and it was just an obvious choice to be Audrey. Mm-hmm. And, you know, not only is she so impactful in a fashion sense, and always has been and still is, her life story was just so fascinating, and she was just such an inspiring woman as well. So again, pure joy to create her story.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love so much about her story is her friendship with Givenchy.
Yes.
And how much that played a role in her entire life, not just her clothes and her style, but also just that connection that they had.
Yeah, and I think this was something that we talked about early on, that it was one of the first sort of Hollywood celebrity and fashion designer relationships where it was a genuine friendship, and they genuinely thought very highly of each other and respected each other's work in the different fields, and it's like a power couple in a way, even though they weren't a romantic couple.
Yeah.
But
although she said that he was the love of her life.
Yes,
yeah.
which is a lovely thing that she said, and I think that relationship was one of the first, and you see it a lot more today with designers and actors and actresses. But what they created together was magic, and. Mm-hmm. And I loved that so many of her costumes and iconic looks throughout her films and the different things that she did were created by Givenchy for her. And you know, my favourite thing between the two of them that we illustrated in the book was at the end of her life when she was very unwell and she had to very quickly get back home, and there were no flights, and Givenchy lent her his private plane and filled the entire plane with roses for her when she was very unwell. And I thought that
beautiful.
Was just the friendship had begun when they were young, and right until the point of almost the end for her, the connection was so strong. So yeah, beautiful friendship.
Yeah, oh, it's so nice talking about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 1 million books, Audrey up next, but you've got some exciting things in the pipeline for next year as well. Can you tell us about what's next for you in terms of books?
Well, the fun never stops, as you know. Yes, so in our Little Black Dress, the Little Black Dress, which is also coming out very soon,
yes.
There will be 2 new books coming out in that series, handbags and shoes, which again, like the Little Black Dress, they're kind of very singular topics, but there is a world within them of stories and memories and different things that go back to those items that fashion lovers really love. So I think those 2 books are going to be very cute with the Little Black Dress. And then our next biography, can I say what that is?
Yes, you can.
Well, after Audrey, we thought it was obviously very fitting that the most iconic person in fashion would be Grace Kelly.
Yes.
And, you know, Grace Kelly, very different to Audrey, although both, Hollywood classic stars with incredible style. Grace Kelly's life and story was very different to Audrey's, and I also, you know, growing up, loved the films that I saw Grace Kelly in. I think Rear Window with Alfred Hitchcock was the first really scary movie I was allowed to see, and Bolstead is a bit of a scary movie. Her incredible costumes and everything in that film was probably the first time I connected her with fashion as well. But her life in Monaco and, you know, becoming a princess and everything, her story is really incredible as well. So I'm really excited to start working on that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Well, I think that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much for talking with us.
My pleasure.
And we can't wait to see the next books.
Thanks, Em.
Hi, I'm Astrid Brown, Managing Director of Hardie Grant Explore. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I work, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and extend my respect to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people around the country. Well, what a year it's been. Thanks to your efforts, we were the #1 travel publisher on Bookscan in 2021, with a 41% market share. Out of the 10 top travel titles published in the year, 9 belong to us. And our top-selling title, Ultimate Road Trips Australia, is hitting 50,000 copies and with no signs of slowing. And the rest of the series has done impressive numbers as well. And we do have more from that series coming, so watch this space. We've had a really extensive domestic offering, ranging from camping to places we swim and to our perennial bestseller, Explore Australia. So it's been a pretty amazing year for us. And I really want to thank you for the efforts that you've put in to get us to that position. But as you would know, we publish so much more than travel books, and the rebranding that we undertook, moving from Hardie Grant Travel to Hardie Grant Explore, is, I believe, a really true reflection of what we do, which is exploring places, people, and environments in a curated, meaningful, and respectful way. I'm particularly proud of our First Nations publishing, led by the wonderful Marcia Langton's Welcome to Country, which is now in its 2nd edition, and the strong publishing that we've had from Thomas Mayer, Victor Stephenson, Corey Tutt, Bruce Pascoe, just to name a few, that has really helped to build a strong and curated list. We have some exciting titles to publish in 2022. We have Safar from journalist Sarah Malik, that centers the experiences and perspectives of Muslim women and broadens that and takes that to a wider audience. We also have a brand new book from Corey Tutt, this time for adults. It's called This Book Thinks You're Deadly, and it profiles 100 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heroes who are doing great things in the fields of art, sport, community. And we also have This Old Van by much-loved couple from the block, Michael and Carlene Duffy, who show us how to style and renovate a second-hand van with flair. So lots of great books coming your way in 2022. And I'll now leave you to listen to the authors of those books. And thank you very much again for your support.
Hi, my name is Sarah Malik, and I'm the author of Safar, a guide to travel and transformation for Muslim women and girls. So Safar is the 3rd in an incredible series by Georgina Lawton and Michelle Law. So make sure you get those. And what does Safar mean? So basically Safar is the Arabic and Urdu word for journey. So in this book, I interviewed dozens of diverse Muslim women from around the world to understand what the concept of journey meant to them, whether it was in their own backyard or abroad, and how it intersected with questions of identity, with their spirituality, with their self-expression, and really their sense of adventure in the world. So there's really lovely stories of love and friendship and self-discovery, and also questions of solidarity and politics. Things like, is it possible to travel in a safe, sustainable, and decolonial way? And what does that look like? So if you are on a journey or you want to embark on a journey, whether physical or metaphoric, I think this is the book for you. It's inspiring, it's energizing, it's a beautiful, lovely read. I'm so proud of bringing it to you, and I hope that you will read it, buy it, and love it.
Yama everyone, Corey Tutt here. I'm here to tell you about my new book, which is called This Book Thinks You're Deadly, and it's a celebration of black excellence. So the idea for this book was to celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are still around today, doing incredible things, putting them in a book for people to read about their incredible stories. We have so many beautiful people in our community, from artists to sports heroes to just plain education legends to activists. So I really wanted to create a book that could sit on a coffee table, that anyone could pick up and be inspired by black fellas and doing really good stuff. So, you know, this book is hopefully going to be one of many that I write, but this is a really important one for me because I think we should be celebrating black fellas everywhere and the true history of Australia. You know, we've had colonisation happen 234 years ago, but black fellas have been leading the way, whether it be in science, being the first scientist, sport, activism. So I'm really excited to put this book out there. I've been working hard on it, so it shouldn't be too far away, and we're going to have some pretty cool designs in it as well. So I'm going to take you on a journey about This Book Thinks You're Deadly, and it's going to be a celebration of black excellence. So one most important thing for you all is to stay deadly, stay brave, and keep following your passions. Yalu!
Hi, we're Michael and Carlene. You may recognise our faces from our appearance as contestants on the Block Glass House in 2014. Since then, we've done a whole host of renovations of different scales, but in 2017, we renovated a vintage Millard, Florida van called a Millie, and she was navy and white and really beautiful, and she resonated with audiences more than we ever could have anticipated.
Since Millie, we've renovated a further 3 vintage caravans, and they continue to resonate with our audience. And we think that's because where renovating a home might seem a little bit out of reach for some people, renovating a caravan is quite attainable. We are contacted by people from all over the world wanting advice on painting, design, layout, the mechanics, how to replace a window. So we thought it was time that we would create a resource all in one spot that answers all those questions.
Enter our book, How to Renovate a Vintage Caravan. So we're in the process of renovating our 5th caravan, and this one's quite different from the others in that it's designed specifically for our family and how we use our space. What we are hoping from this book is to give people the confidence to be able to renovate their own vintage vans and to have the know-how to do it. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, my name is Zoe Coyle and my novel is Where the Light Gets In.
My Heart is a Little Wild Thing is a 3-way love story between a man and another man, between the man and his mother, and about the man and a place down on the Monero in the foothills of the Snowy Mountains, which meant so much to him when he was growing up.
Family String is a novel about a family in the 1960s that is a little different from the community around it because of their involvement with the Christadelphian Church, and how this family, with Dorcas, 12 years old, at the centre, deals with a series of challenges and a family tragedy.
The Woman in the Library is a story within a story folded into the pages of a correspondence. It opens with a letter addressed to Hannah. Hannah is an established Australian writer. The letter is written by Leo, who is a friend and a fan of Hannah's, who lives in the States. In the beginning, Leo is everything any writer could wish for in a correspondent and a fan. He is helpful and funny and encouraging. He's even willing to do research. But as the novel progresses and we read more of Leo's letters, we come to realize there's really something quite dark about the man. For one thing, he seems to know an awful lot about how exactly to kill people. The other side of the novel is Hannah's story, the one she writes in response to the advice and the research that Leo sends her. Her story is based around Winifred Freddie, a young Australian writer who is in Boston writing her very worthy first novel under the auspice of a prestigious writers' fellowship. We first meet Freddie in the reading room of the Boston Public Library, where she's seated at a table with 3 perfect strangers, when a primal, terrified scream shatters the silence. And everything stops because everyone knows that something awful has happened. And yet, when a search is conducted, there's nothing. There is no body, no apparent reason for the scream. It's as if it came out of nowhere and disappeared.
My novel, Something Blue, is a story about love and loss set within the melting pot of Sydney's West. The leading character, Nicole, is a young Lebanese woman who, in the aftermath of a failed relationship, begins to search for love and purpose.
Hi, I'm Eliza Henry Jones and I'm the author of Salt and Skin. Salt and Skin is the story of a bereaved woman and her 2 teenage children, moving from their drought-stricken farm in Australia to a remote Scottish island that's still haunted by the 17th century witch hunts.
Hi, my name is Zane Khalid. My debut novel is called Brother Alive. It is about 3 adopted brothers who were raised above a mosque in Staten Island by their imam father. As the boys reach adulthood, the imam disappears and they follow him to a futuristic linear city in Saudi Arabia where they learn about the truth about their shared history, the role that they and their parents played in the creation of the city, and who their father actually is.
One of the joys of writing Something Blue was bringing to life the streets and suburbs that my community grew up in and paying homage to the unsung heroes that live there. I wrote this story as a sort of love letter to Sydney's West so that people like me would have something they can really relate to. But I also wrote it so that other readers would have a window into the Australian Lebanese experience that's both funny and heartfelt.
I wrote The Woman in the Library the way I wrote it because I have a particular and enduring interest in the nature of friendships, both literary and otherwise.
2 experiences that influenced the writing of the family string were my days working in child protection, where I worried about young children who actually had to raise their parents and who tried to grow and flourish even if their parents weren't emotionally available to them. The other experience was growing up myself in the Christadelphian church. Don't worry about me, I had a terrific time, but it wasn't a community well understood by the people around it. And these 2 themes help create the context for the story.
My literary epigraph for Something Blue is from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself.
And the dead followed them, as they do us, tenderly through darkness, but fade when we turn to look in the upper air. Ursula Fanthorpe.
There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
The tensions between mothers and daughters and the healing power of love. I'd love you to go and find out what happens next. In fact, go now and organise a copy and I'll just wait here.